Okay, am I audible now? You can just type in yes in the chat box if it is audible. Okay. Yeah, I can join from my other device, but it brings an echo. That's the problem. So I'm just trying to figure out if there is a way for me to join in without getting an echo. So we'll do that in a few minutes. I don't want to keep stalling this in the meantime. So first, let's start with a basic introduction. So I'm Aarti Agarwal. I'm a PhD scholar at IIT Kanpur, and these TA sessions are arranged by PMRF and NPTEL. PMRF is a fellowship for PhD scholars, and as a part of PMRF, we do some online or offline teaching where we teach students, participants from places other than our own institute. So somebody is saying they're not able to hear any sound. Is that so for everybody? Is nobody able to hear me, or is it only one person? Can everyone just type in? Yeah, so others are able to hear. So, maybe you can just check your own audio and see if there is something wrong. Yeah. Okay, so it's audible for other people, so I'm going to carry on for now. Okay, yeah, there's an audio. Okay, just give me 1 minute. Yeah, can you hear me now? Okay, so the only problem is now it's not showing me as the active speaker. Okay, this is weird. All right. Okay, let's move on. So since you guys can hear me, I'm assuming there is like no need for me to fluster like with this thing anymore. So okay, are you able to see my video? Yes. Okay. So yeah, because to me it's just because I'm speaking through this device, it's showing only this photo. It's not showing my active video as the video. So let me just change the settings. So this is probably not something which is going to happen in every session. You know, this is the first class for this particular session, so that's why it's taking a little bit of time. So just bear with me. All right, let's see if this works. Okay, this thing is not allowing me to. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. So today we'll cover the portion from week 1. Okay, so let's get started with week 1. First of all, like, you know, if you guys have any questions, any doubts, anything conceptual which you want answered, you can just tell me first off, so that you know, we can just make sure that we are covering everybody's questions, because otherwise I will carry on with my questions, and then you know, I will take up questions based on everything that is covered in week 1. The idea is to help you understand how to solve questions, because usually what happens is that students think they have understood the material, but sometimes they have like some doubts and something, and they don't really realize that they have not really understood it. So these problem solving sessions are supposed to help you with applying the concepts, applying everything that is covered in the lecture videos in solving questions, because in the end the assignments will be you know, the assignments will be based on mostly conceptual but also numerical questions. Okay, so let me just see, somebody has said something on the chat. No. Okay. All right. So at any point of time, if you feel like you are not following what I'm saying or something is not clear, please feel free to pause and ask me your doubts, or at any point if you feel the audio is breaking or the screen is not visible, or if you also see that the video is not getting recorded, please let me know, because sometimes, I'm too much in the concepts and I'm just explaining and I don't realize that something has gone off. Okay, so let's get started. And usually these sessions are meant to be 2 hour long. Once in a while, it may be a little more than 2 hours if people are asking questions and I'm just answering you guys. But typically, try to confine everything in the 2 hours, because 2 hours is already a long enough period, right? That's one. Second thing, for every class, I will upload all the lecture slides, the questions and the class notes, which will be available to you guys after the session is over, maybe by the end of the day or something. So you don't have to worry about writing down the question like that. If you want to write it down to solve it or something like that, that's fine. But you don't have to worry that whether you will get the questions or not, because all the class notes and slides will all be uploaded, and the video. So the recorded video will also be uploaded. So you can, the link where you can find all this will be updated by the NPTEL team, but I will also share it again once, at the end of the class. So don't worry about any of that. Just focus on the material that I'm covering. And if you have any doubts from what I'm saying or from what Professor Vimal has covered in the lectures. All right, so let me get started with today's content notes which I have prepared. And yeah, once I share the screen, please let me know if you're able to see the screen. Okay. Okay. Is my screen visible? Can you see the slides?
No, ma'am.
No. Okay. I'm also not able to see. I'm not sure what happened. Let's stop. Let's start again. Okay. Okay. Hopefully now it's visible.
Yes.
Okay. Great. All right, so let's start with just a little bit of, let's say, warm up. Okay, just covering a few things which are already there in the lectures. I'm just going over some of the key concepts. Not all questions will be this simple, but still, let's just get started. So in economics, how do we answer the fundamental questions? So these are some of the fundamental questions of economics, right? What should you produce? How much should you produce? How to produce? And for whom are you producing, right? So what is the main criteria when you are answering these questions? Not one of them, all of these questions. When you're answering, trying to answer all of these questions, what is the main criteria? What is the, you can say, method which you use? Okay, so if you want, you can type your answers in the chat box, or if you want, you can also unmute and speak. And I can also invite you guys to answer like in the class if you're comfortable with it. I'll just give you a few minutes to think over the question. It's only one person has answered. So there's no, there's no negative marking for answering wrong in the live sessions. It's just for your learning sake. So it's the way I see it, at least in the classes, not just like not this class, but in all my classes, I'd rather answer wrongly and have the instructor correct me than never know what mistake I was making, right? So it may feel a bit silly for a few minutes, but in the end, you will know where your reasoning was wrong, right? So that's why I always encourage people to answer whether it is right or wrong, so you can at least understand and have clarity about the concepts. Okay, so a few people have answered, and I know scarcity seems like a very viable answer, because after all, what we say in economics is the study of scarcity, right? If
If he had infinite resources, of course we wouldn't have these questions. So in a way, you can say scarcity is the reason why we have these questions, right? If we could produce everything infinitely, and if we had infinite resources and infinite demand, we would not have these questions, right? So the way I see it is that scarcity is the reason why we have the questions in the first place, but it's not the method we would use to decide the answer to the questions, right? Similarly, if you look at individuals, so individuals are different, and each individual would have a different answer for these questions, so it cannot be individual, right? Choices are again something which an economic agent, be it individual or a household or a firm, are again what each person or each individual or each agent would answer for themselves, right? But what we are asking is, at a macro level, how do you answer these questions? What to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce? So that leaves us with allocation. And the reason why it is allocation is because of scarcity, right? Because we have scarce resources, because we have even demand is not infinite, right? There's like hardly any scenario in which you would have an infinite demand. Even if you could have infinite number of oranges or apples, would you keep them? No, you wouldn't, right? You would still be like maybe happy after a dozen or something like that. You cannot have infinite quantity of anything, which is why you need allocation. What is allocation? Like just the English word allocation. Does anybody want to answer what we mean by allocation? It's not in terms of economics, like we will come to economics also, but just the word allocation, like just the dictionary meaning of allocation.
Assigning something to someone.
Assigning something to someone. Okay. Anything else? Let me just read out what Google says. Um, right. So as per I'm just responding to what Google says, the Google dictionary. An amount of resource assigned to a particular recipient, just similar to what you said. But when it comes to economics, it's of course the process of assigning to different agents. It's a little more than that. Like, technically you are right. What in economics we mean by allocation is, how much of a resource are you rationing or are you budgeting for some activity or for some production process. So say suppose you are a firm, right, and you have to decide between five products, five SKUs or five products, right? And you have only so many resources, and all the five products are using very similar kind of resources, right? But the demand for each product is say different. It's not the same. We don't all have the same kind of a demand function. So you are now trying to decide that among whatever resources you have, and again there is a cost structure for each product, right? So given the cost and given the availability of resources, given the demand, given everything else, how are you going to decide how much of resources you put in each product, for example, right? So I'm just giving one example, like of a firm where it comes to production. It could also be like from the individual point of view, your income is limited, right? Even millionaires or billionaires do have a limit on their income. It's not infinite, right? So at the end of the day, from your income, like how much of your income you allocate to each of your wants or wants slash needs, and how much you want to put into savings, for example. So all this process, it's a little more deeper than just assigning, but you've got the right idea. So I'm just trying to give you a little more description of what we mean when we say allocation. So when we say that, how we answer these fundamental questions of what to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce, that process we call as allocation. Okay, so the next question is, which of the following does not affect the demand of a good? You can see the options and tell me what you think. So you can just type it in the chat box, or you can.
Change in productivity of labor.
Okay. Anybody else? Anyone else wants to attempt? You can also type in the chat box whatever you think should be the answer. 3. Okay. Okay. Okay, that's good. So I think you guys are getting um, getting the concept here. So basically, all of these other options, availability of substitutes, changing preferences of the agent, expectations about future, all of these do alter the demand of a good, right? What productivity of labor does is that it does not affect the demand, it affects the supply of a good, right? Because it decides how much or how soon something can be produced. So if labor is less productive, the the kind of resources required for producing the good would change, hence the output produced would change, or it may cost more or whatever, it will change the whole production function basically of the good. So change in productivity of labor would alter the supply of a good, not the demand, because demand is not related to labor. Great. Okay, next question. You have to, okay, is the screen not updating? Yeah. All right. So question 3, you have 2 columns and you have, it's a jumbled column thing. You have to match items from column 1 with items from column 2. So which one do you think goes with what? So I'm going to mute myself for a few minutes. I will let you guys figure this out. If you want, you can, just type in the answer. You can write, yeah, like somebody has answered in terms of instead of ABCD what it should be. So you can do something like that. Oops. Okay, one more person has answered. Great. Anyone else? Okay, someone else has answered. Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Or should I give away the answer now? Anyone else wants to try? No? Okay. So let's go over it one by one. First is the price at which an individual is indifferent between doing and not doing something. So that is usually, there are other terms also for it, but usually the reservation price of something, right? Generally, the most common context in which you will hear this word used is, wages. For example, there is a job that's paying you something, and there is a certain, when you're in the job market, when you're looking for a job, for example, and there is a certain reservation wage you have, right? At that wage, you are okay with the job and also okay with not doing it. Like you're indifferent between the two, which means that if the wage offered to you is higher than that reservation wage, you would opt for the job, right? So that means um, that you are the whatever price, or whatever in this case wage is, the like the tipping point, you can call it sort of like a tipping point. If it is a little higher than that, then you would opt for a job. And this is when we're talking about wage, which means we're talking about the labor market. But if for a normal good, there is a reservation price, not the wage, right? It's the other way around. So in a reservation price, for example, if a product is priced at some, value, some number, if the price is more than that, you would not buy the product. At that given price, you are indifferent between buying it and not buying it, right? If the price is lower than that, then you would definitely buy it. That is your reservation price for a product. So remember, wages and prices for normal goods work almost opposite to each other. So I've given you two examples of where this concept is used, because it's used in many places. So the first one is B, 1B, the price at which an individual is indifferent between doing and not doing something. The second is an economy in which central government plans, organizes, and controls all economic activities to maximize social welfare. So in this, we're talking about a type of an economy. So it is going to be the command economy. So I think you've covered different types of economies: mixed economy, I think market economy, command economy. So command economy is in which the central government is controlling everything. All the economic decisions, activities, you can say maybe tariffs, and it's the job of the central government to maximize social welfare, considering all of these, right? So that is a command economy. There are other types of economies, and this is maybe like a refresher. You can just go back and check what each type includes, right? That leaves us with oops, I think I made typo. I'm so sorry. One of these would be microeconomics and the other would be macroeconomics. I think I typed both as macro. So sorry, that's an error on my part, but I think you guys understood what I was asking. So the study of individual economic decision making would be microeconomics, and the branch of economics that studies the decision making process of the economy as a whole would be macro. So if you've answered B, A, C, D or B, A, D, C, both are correct, because in this case, I'm giving you the benefit of doubt because I sort of made a typo there. Okay. All right. Moving on. So now let's now move to some numerical kind of questions. So you have, okay, I'll just wait for the screen to update. The screen is not updated. Okay. All right, question 4 is, so usually, yeah, just a note that most of the times, if I am taking a question as is from some textbook, I will mention the textbook with a question. So you can see this question is, I think it's, as far as I remember, it's taken from Halvarian. And so you will find this reference reading at the end of all the slides. So I've mentioned 4 books here. These are the books which Professor Vimal has also recommended. The first 2 are recommendations from him, I think, and the last 2 are recommendations from me. Okay, so I have taken questions from all of these books for the next 12 weeks. And just for your reference purpose, I have put the names here. The second one, Introduction to Economic Analysis, this is an online books. First and second both are actually free online books. So you can, I think these are both hyperlinks, so you can check these books if you need to. So you're asking, sir said that macroeconomics is the study of entire economy. Can we say microeconomy is also part of macroeconomy? So this is a slightly more philosophical question, but if I'm to stick to the basic content, basic material that you study in macroeconomics versus what you study in microeconomics, you can say macroeconomics is, at least modern neoclassical macroeconomics, is more or less derived from microeconomics, right? But you are not looking at individual behavior, for example, right? In microeconomics, we are looking at the individual decision-making processes of any economic agent, be it an individual or a household or a firm, or even the government for that matter. You're looking at the decision-making process of one agent or general agents and their behavior, their decision-making process, right? When we're talking about macroeconomics, we're talking about how individuals behave in aggregate, and based on that, how we are going to take decisions for the whole economy. You understanding? In this case, in micro, each agent is optimizing only their own welfare, right? They're only thinking about how to optimize their welfare, how to minimize their unhappiness, so to say, how to allocate their income or the resources at an individual level, and we are studying how they take these decisions. In macroeconomics, we are looking at how you would take this kind of a decision for the whole economy, which includes different kinds of agents, which includes firms also, which includes individuals also, which can include individuals with different types of preferences, which includes the government also. So you're looking at everything together for the whole, right? So macro is not disconnected from micro, because a lot of the ideas of micro do go into macro, like especially, like I said, in neoclassical macro, because like I'm not talking about Keynesian macro. Keynesian macro is slightly disconnected from microeconomics. So we're not talking about Keynesian kind of macroeconomics, but at least in modern macroeconomics, it is derived in great part from microeconomics. But you can't really say that micro is a part of macro. It doesn't really work like that. Does that answer your question, Rishi Raj? Okay, cool. So let me go back to question number 4. And yeah, so this is a question where you have a girl, Maria. She's studying economics and sociology. She can read 40 pages of economics and 30 pages of sociology in some amount of time. And in the same amount of time, she can also read 30 pages of economics and 60 pages of sociology. Okay. Number of pages per hour that she can read in either subject is what it is. It does not depend on how she allocates her time. That is how much she can read in a certain amount of time, how much of economics or sociology she can read in a certain amount of time is given. It's not changing. So the question has 2 parts. One is, how many pages of sociology can she read if she decides to spend all her time on sociology? And how many pages of economics can she read if she decides to spend all of her time on economics? Okay, so now I'm just going to give you a few minutes to decide how you want to solve this. And okay, I can't really mute myself, but all right, I will just stop talking for a few minutes and I will let you solve this. And then when you guys are done, I will solve it for you. Okay, some people have solved very good. I will I will solve it in class also in a few minutes. In the meantime, I'll encourage other people also to please solve. So I think my meeting cap is for 25 participants. So I think more people are not able to join. I can't increase the limit right now because there is some limitation on how soon you can increase the participant limit. But in the future, just in case I'm not able to increase this limit, I'll encourage you to please join on time, because afterwards it may max out again. So I will try to increase the participant limit to more than 25 next time. I don't think I can increase it right now. Let me try. Okay, few people have solved it. So yeah, because I increased my meeting limit only today, it's not letting me increase it further today. Those who have not been able to join, unfortunately, I'm sorry about that, because I'm saying this because this is a recorded video also. Next time, please join in on time, so you're not locked out. And I'll also try to increase the meeting limit. Okay, so has everyone attempted? Should I go ahead? Okay, some more people have solved it. Okay, I think almost everybody is getting the same kind of answer. So I think most people have got it. So maybe I will solve it a little bit and leave you guys to solve the rest, because you mostly get it, but I will go over it. Let me open the question again. Okay, so we have, let's say, number. You can see my screen, right?
Yes, madam.
Okay. So let's say number of pages of economics is equal to X, and number of pages of, right. So I hope you can at least sort of read my handwriting. It's not very pretty, but I hope you can still manage with it. Right? You can make sense of my handwriting, right? Yes? Okay. Only one yes, but I'm hoping, because there's not much I can do about my handwriting right now. So you will have to live with what it is for now. Okay. Okay, thank you. So let me, okay, how many pages? So in the first case, you have 40 pages of economics. So 40x, and 30 pages of sociology, so 30y. She's reading this in some time t, right, is equal to, say, t. And in the same time t, she's also reading 30 pages of economics and 60 pages of sociology, right? So t I've just added to explain what I'm doing, but you actually don't need t at all. You can just do this as 40x is equal to this. So let's separate x's and y's. So 10x is equal to 30y, x is equal to 3y, right? So now we know that, like, what is the relation between x and y. For every page of economics that Maria reads, she can read 3 pages of sociology, right? So now if you want to figure out what happens in either scenario, so let's just substitute this value. So t is equal to, instead of x, let's put y. 40 into 3y plus 30y, this is 150y. So if it is, if you want to find out what happens if she devotes her time only to sociology, in that same time t, she can read 150 of sociology. Similarly, you can also substitute y in terms of x, right? So 40x plus 30y, y is what? X by 3, right? So this becomes 50x. So, which means that in that same amount of time t, she can read either only 150 pages of sociology or only 50 pages of economics or any of these combinations which are given. To be even more rigorous, if you want, you can draw this diagram, right? X and Y. And we know that she's not reading any Y, it's 50. If she's not reading any X, it's 150. And this is the curve. Or let me draw this in some other color. This is the curve, right? At any other point, you will get the combination which we have 40x, 30y, 30x, 60y, something like that. So this is like a straight line, basically, right? So it's not a very difficult question. You just had to solve a linear equation in two variables. Third variable is t, but then we never need to know what is t, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, so let's go back. Next, go to question number 5. This is a slightly similar question, but we're asking something else in this question, right? Murphy was consuming 100 units of X and 50 units of Y. The price of X rose from 2 to 3. The price of Y remained at 4. Now, how much would Murphy's income have to rise so that he can still afford exactly 100 units of X and 50 units of Y? So, relatively simple question. Oops. What the hell? Done. Okay. Yeah, it's a relatively simple question. If you want, I can solve it, but I think, I would rather you solve it yourself. So we still have time, like we still have good 1 hour, 20 minutes left or something, but we do have other questions. So I'll give you a few minutes to solve this. And if everybody gets it, okay, otherwise I'll solve it. So you can just type your answer in the chat if you want. Right, so actually you don't need to do, I don't know if you guys realize, it's a very straightforward question actually. So let's just do it verbally. 100 units of X and the price of X initially was 2, right? So that's 200 rupees spent on X, and 50 units of Y, price of Y was 4, right? So 200 rupees spent on Y. Initially, Murphy was spending 200 on X and 200 on Y. That's 400, right? Now, price of X is now, the new price of X is 3, and the number of units of X is still 100. So now Murphy needs to spend 300 on X if he still wants 100 units of X, and Y is remaining unchanged. So he is spending 200 on Y. So the new amount he needs for affording 100 units of X and 50 units of Y is 500. So his income has to increase by 100. So these are very simple questions. And if you want a little more practice, you can look at the book by Halvarian, Workouts in Intermediate Microeconomics. So there are two. There is one which is just Intermediate Microeconomics, which is a textbook. It just has the theory part. And there is a different book, Workouts in Intermediate Microeconomics. That book is more like a question bank or something, right? It's just a lot of questions for clearing your concept. They're really nice questions, some of them. I bring in a few in the class, but there are a lot which are slightly different, slightly repetitive, but you can look at it if you like. Okay. Let's move on to the next question. This question is from the Perloff book, and this I've taken it exactly as it is from the book. I think, as far as I remember, it is a solved example from Perloff. So if you want, the solution is there in Perloff. You can look at the book, or I mean, I will also solve it in the class. But so some people last year, some people were asking why the function is like this. It's like a weird number, 8.56, blah blah blah. So this is um, an actual function. It's not a made up question. That's why the function is like this. This is how they computed it, and this is what they found the demand function to be. So the demand for estimated world demand function for green coffee beans is capital Q equal to 8.56 minus P minus 0.3 PS plus zero point 0.1 Y, where capital Q is the quantity of coffee in millions of tons per year. P is the price of coffee in dollars per pound. PS is the price of sugar in dollars per pound. And Y is the average annual household income in high income countries in thousands of dollars, right? So, okay, I have not read the question. Somebody has answered. Great. Wonderful. So, is sugar a complement or a substitute? So, of course, if you want, you can answer the question, but more importantly, you should know the reasoning behind that. Okay. And if you know the reasoning, you will never go wrong. I'm assuming you know the reasoning. That's why you answered it. But just this is for everybody. If you know the reasoning, it will help you for a long time. Okay. So, this is, let's do the first question first. So I will let other people also answer. 2 people have answered. Anybody else wants to answer? Okay, great. Yes, somebody has answered it. Anyone else wants to attempt? Okay. So the non-participating participants, I would encourage you also to please participate a little more just for your own benefit. I'm not going to call anybody out because I don't want to make people uncomfortable. But it's nice to hear from more people. It makes me feel like you are here. Because in online teaching, that's one of the drawbacks. You don't know if people are actually there or not. Okay, so let's go over the rationale behind it. Right, so now you can see that the demand function for green coffee beans is Q blah 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 minus 0.3 PS, right? So minus 0.3 PS implies that if PS is increasing, the quantity of green coffee beans is decreasing. Demand for coffee beans is decreasing. That is, I'm not implied, inferred anything from that. That is just something I'm reading from the function itself. Is so far so good with everybody? As PS increases, Q is decreasing, right? You can answer yes or no. So if this much is clear to everyone, let's go to further to what this means. If the price of sugar is increasing, what does that mean? That if price is increasing, quantity of sugar demanded will decrease, right? Because it's not an inferior good. At least there's nothing in this example which suggests that sugar is an inferior good, right? So for normal goods, as long as the price of something increases, the quantity demanded will always decrease, right? So if price of sugar is increasing, quantity demanded of sugar is decreasing. And when we see that the quantity demanded for some good decreases and it's correlated with another goods demand also decreasing, we assume or we understand or we infer that they are complements, because you can't make coffee without sugar, something like that, right? One depends on the other. That's what complements mean. Like sugar and coffee is also like an obvious one, but say milk and tea, right? Or bread and butter, right? Things which usually go together. So if the price of butter is increasing a lot, the demand for bread would also decrease along with the demand for butter, right? So similarly, it is what we are seeing in this particular example. If this was plus zero point 0.3 ps for some reason, and if ps was some other good, maybe not sugar, something else, say ps is price of tea, or let's say it's not ps, it's pt, and you have plus zero point 0.3 pt, then what would it be? Would it be a complement or a substitute? Did you get the question? Let me annotate here. Why won't it let me annotate? Okay, something is wrong. It's not letting me annotate it, but I will write it on the yeah, I will repeat the question. I was just trying to write down the question, but it's not letting me annotate for some reason. Okay. Okay, I'm just writing down another question or another function. If this is the function, demand function for coffee, this is the question I'm asking. So if this is, say, another new function where the other terms have the same meaning, Q is demand for coffee, P is price of coffee, Y is average income. Only changes, instead of minus 0.3 PS, I have changed to plus 0.3 PT. Now I'm asking where PT is the price of T. So then is T complement or a substitute? So most people have answered correctly, I think, that it is a substitute. Exactly, good. So that's what we're trying to infer here. In this case, PT is the price of tea. So if price of tea is increasing, what we are seeing is the demand for coffee is increasing, right? It's a it's a positive correlation here, which means that as price of tea is increasing, demand for tea is decreasing, and instead of tea, people are now switching to coffee. So the demand for coffee is increasing, right? So you understood the difference between complements and substitutes. The main difference here is, let me highlight it in this. This is, instead of minus 0.3 PS, this is plus 0.3 PT. That is the main difference. So this is, sometimes you have to be careful, okay? Sometimes it may be flipped. Instead of a demand function, you may be given an inverse demand function. And you have to be careful where we are talking about P or PT or PS, right? P is the price of the good itself, which is price of coffee. PT or PS or any other thing may be the price of some other good. So be careful what happens when you are changing signs for the other good. For the same good, it's a different question altogether, right? All right, so let's go back to the question. This is only the first part of the question. Now, if PS and Y values are given, you derive the demand function for coffee. This is pretty simple. You just substitute the values into this given function and you just compute whatever it comes out to be. Okay. In the next part, if Y increases from 35 to 50, In part 2, y was 35. In part 3, if y increases from 35 to 50, what will happen to the demand curve for coffee? You have to draw it in a diagram. So I'm guessing you guys will not be able to draw the diagram and send it, but let's just do it quickly on the notes. So let me draw this here. Oops. This is the price and quantity of coffee. So initially what we had was, let me draw this in a different color. What we had initially was, let me look at the function. Say something like this, original demand function, right? Now what we are doing is, look at the values again. So the yeah, so 8.56 minus p plus, sorry, minus 0.3 ps plus 0.1 y. Now if you put the values that are given, ps is equal to 0.2, y is now equal to 50, right? What this solves out to be is, this is q, or let's call this new curve which we get after putting y is equal to 50. Let's call this as q prime, just to differentiate between the original curve. This will come out to be, I think, 3.5 minus p. Just in a quick calculation. You can check if it is this or if it is something else. So this is the curve for q, original q, and this, what I've solved now, q prime, is the curve after substituting the value of phi of y as equal to 50. So what is happening? The intercept is increasing, right? At t is equal to 0. Initially q was 12. Now it is q prime is equal to 13.5. So that means the curve is shifting. Oops. The Unfortunately, this line is generally always going to be shaky because somehow that's how iPad is. No matter how straight I draw a line, it always looks shaky. So, but I think it's not so bad. You can look at, just if you just see schematically or diagrammatically what it represents, it just means that this is shifting up, right? Like it's not exactly up like that, but that's how we use it, the terms we use in microeconomics, that the curve shifts up, the demand curve shifts up. And there's one thing to note here, the shifting of demand curve happens when some other parameter in the demand curve or the demand function is changing, right? So now, for example, like I look at this demand function, either one, this one, let's look at this one. Say 8.56 minus p minus 0.3 ps plus 0.1 y. In this, if the values of ps or y change, then the demand curve will move up or down, right? That is shifting of the demand curve. But if the price of p is changing, what will happen? Does anyone want to answer? What happens when p is changing? I'm not talking about ps or y. What happens when p is changing?
Madam, it will move along the curve instead of.
Right, yes. Good. So just trying to make you audible to me. Okay. Yes, that's correct. So when price changes, you are traveling along the curve, right? This, I was going to use the same color, right? So this is what happens when P changes. That is the function, right? That is what the demand function explains there may be other variables, but for example, if you already know what PS and Y is, then it just reduces to 12 minus P or 13.5 minus P, right? In the end, the demand function is giving a relation between quantity demanded versus the price of the good. So P is changing, Q is anyways obviously going to change, and that change itself is given by the demand function. That is the very purpose of the demand function, right? So don't get confused. If whenever you get a question in your assignment or exam or whatever, or anywhere in life when you're studying economics, the price of the good for which the demand function is given, if the price changes, you're traveling along the demand curve. But if the price of substitutes or income or some other parameter changes, the demand curve is going to shift, right? Okay, so let's go back to a question. So far, so good. Is this clear to everyone? So far, whatever we've covered. Any questions so far? No. So should I interpret the silence as no? Okay. Great. So I'm going to take a 10-minute break here because it's a 2-hour class. Generally, people max out after 1 hour. They stop listening and has this borne out by lack of response. So you can go have water, tea, whatever. I'll just mute myself also. And we will come back. Okay, somebody has solved the question. That is very good. I'll come back and I will explain this question. Okay, wait, somebody has asked me, right? Oh, I drew the curve wrong. So, okay. Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. In a hurry, I think I drew it wrong. Trust me, that is not how I meant to do it. I just did it very quickly. Yeah, somebody has asked this. Okay, so Q and P. Thank you for pointing it out. I just wrote it wrong in the... So this is a very big philosophical question on why we take price on y-axis and why we take the quantity on x-axis. But I'm not going to answer that question. Some people decided to make it that way, so that's how we do it. Did I do it correctly before? Yeah, I haven't drawn any diagram before. So, okay. So, yeah, just ignored that. I just typed it out wrong. But you understood what I was trying to do, right? The people who had asked me about the curve. Is it okay otherwise? Yes. All right. So,
Madam,
okay. So, yes,
sorry.
somebody is saying something?
I had this big concern about how to differentiate between substitute goods and complementary goods when we look at the demand function curve.
Okay. So, did you follow the difference between substitute and complements? Do you know the difference between substitutes and complements?
I did understand the statements, but when I look at the curve, I'm getting confused repeatedly about how to categorize a good as a substitute or complement.
Okay. All right. I will repeat it. So, let's write this separately. Okay. Okay. So, forget about whatever I said till now. Now, assume that a good is a substitute good, right? As what happens in a substitute good? For example, let's talk about tea and coffee, right? If you are really fond of coffee, but you also like tea, you just like coffee a little bit more, or you prefer coffee. But coffee is very expensive, right? Say, suppose your pocket money is enough to buy a cup of tea, like, which costs say 10 rupees, coffee costs 50 rupees, right? So you can either buy 1 cup of coffee or you can buy 5 cups of tea. Now, say suppose price of coffee increases even more, it becomes 100 rupees. Maybe you don't want to buy coffee that much because it costs too much. So what you will do, maybe you will buy only 1 cup of coffee and you will buy more of tea, right? Or on average, say in a month, you are buying 5 cups of coffee and 15 cups of tea. Instead of 5, maybe you will buy only 2 cups of coffee now, and you will buy 25 cups of tea. Which means that if price of coffee is increasing, what are you doing? You're reducing your consumption of coffee. Is that clear? Is that simple? So far, so good?
Yes, madam.
Right. So you're reducing your consumption of coffee, but you still want some caffeine, right? You want some beverage to go with your food or after your food or whatever. Instead of coffee, you're consuming more of tea because price of coffee has gone up. You're not taking as much coffee, but you are taking more of tea instead, right? Is that clear? So is that good?
Yes, madam.
Right. So in effect, what happens is as price of one good is increasing, price of coffee is increasing, quantity demanded of that good is decreasing, coffee demanded is decreasing, but quantity demanded of the substitute good, tea, is increasing. Is that correct? Is
Sorry,
that clear?
this part I missed it out. Could you please go on?
So if price of coffee is increasing, you're reducing demand for coffee, but you're increasing demand for tea. Because instead of coffee, you're having more of tea.
Right, madam.
Yes? So that is all we are saying. There's nothing else. There's nothing complicated in it. See, most of economics is actually just pure common sense and everything you already observe in life. You're just explaining it in a more structured way. Most of these things you already do in life. It's not something new. I'm taking example of tea and coffee, but you can take something else, whatever you like. Price of Netflix increases, you substitute out of Netflix, you move to say Geo Cinema or something else. I'm just talking about things which we all do every day, right? We all do these kind of things. Maybe you were very fond of Netflix, but Netflix became too expensive. Geo Cinema is not as expensive. So you downgrade your subscription package on Netflix and you subscribe to Geo Cinema instead, right? I'm trying to find more relatable examples, but the concept is basically the same. So basically what happens is price of good X. Okay, so there is some good X. If price of good X increases, let's say this is PX. If price of good X increases, quantity of good X demanded decreases, right? That means quantity demanded of substitute will increase, but complement will decrease. Now imagine that you can't make a cup of tea without sugar or milk, let's say milk, right? So if price of X, now assume X is T. If price of X is increasing, you're using less and less of T, right? So far, so good,
Yes, madam.
right? Now, if you're using or if you're consuming less of tea, what will you do with all that extra milk? You will consume less of milk also, right? Because milk you're using only for tea. You're not consuming, assume you're not consuming milk for anything else. You're only consuming milk for tea, right? So if you're having, say, if you were consuming originally 1 liter of milk in 2 days, now, and you're using milk only for tea, now because of tea is more expensive, you can't afford to have that much of tea, so you're reducing tea. Initially, maybe you're having, say, 20 cups of tea in 2 days, a bit excessive, but still, say it's for a household, right? Now, tea is more expensive, you're having only 10 cups of tea in 2 days. So you will reduce your consumption of milk also in the same proportion, usually in the same proportion. So you will consume now less of milk. You'll consume only half a liter of milk. Is that logic making sense?
Yes, madam.
So you always do it in 2 steps, okay? First thing is, what I think what your place where you're stuck is you are trying to directly jump from price to quantity and mathematical function. You do it in 2 steps. Step one, okay, this is some other color. So first, what happens when the price of given good, price of good X increases, quantity demanded of good X decreases, right? This is step one. You can't miss this step. Second, as quantity demanded using the wrong color again, as I'm writing QTY for quantity, it's just a short form. Now, in this case, for complement, quantity demanded of, let's say, quantity, let's call this C, quantity demanded of C will decrease. For substitute, say S, quantity demanded of S will increase. Okay, so do it in two steps if this is confusing. First, see the effect of price increase of the given good causes quantity demanded of that given good to decrease, and hence what happens to the complement versus substitute. Now you do the same thing in the other way around. So similarly, you do it the other way around. If the quantity demanded, if the price of complement increases, quantity demanded of good C will decrease. And if quantity demanded of good C decreases, the quantity demanded of X will also decrease. So quantity is what you eventually bring it down to. Okay, don't try to jump from price of good X to quantity of good C or good S. See the quantity demanded correlation between the two. As long as that is clear, you will be able to work it out from price to quantity. Is that making sense or not making sense?
Yes, madam.
Okay, yeah, I think the mistake, I feel like usually this is where people get confused. Don't jump directly from price of one to the quantity of the other. First, see the effect of price of one on its own quantity, then see how this change in quantity of this particular good is related with the other good, which may be a complement, may be a substitute. Okay, so if this is clear, I will pause this right now. We'll just take a 10-minute break. The class is till 6 o'clock. We still have, we have only 3 or 4 questions left, and I would like to take a break because I'm the one who's talking. So I'll just mute myself for a few minutes, and I'll be back in a few minutes. In the meantime, you can just go over the material I have already taught, and if you want, you can also see if there is any in the conceptual doubt you have. I will address those once I'm back.
Hello? Is the class still going on?
Yeah, we're in a break right now. So I will just be back in a few minutes and resume the class.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so shall I resume? Am I audible? Okay, so I have put the link on the chat. So NPTEL team will also share this link with you, but they usually take a little bit of time. It will not be like tomorrow. So I shared the link. Please open the link, bookmark it, save it. Uh, just keep it saved in your Google folder, drive, or whatever. Because every week I will update the video link and the folder link. The folder will contain the class slides as well as the class notes. That will all be updated in this spreadsheet. I have not updated it yet. I also actually don't have edit access yet, but I'll hopefully get edit access by tomorrow or something. So once I get edit access, I will update the YouTube link and the slides link and all of that. Okay, so just this time, because this is the first week, it may take a little bit of time to update the links depending on how soon I get access. But usually every week, the links will be updated in the same spreadsheet. So please bookmark this link. Okay. Second thing, every class, because it's a 2-hour class, I will take a short break after 1 hour or maybe a little before 1 or a little after 1 hour. Because I can't speak for 2 hours and most people also stop listening after 1 hour. So I will take like a 10-minute break. The class is still going on. It's just a break. Okay, this is just a standing instruction for all the upcoming classes. Okay, so let me share. Yeah. Okay, let's come back to.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
I have a doubt regarding the nature of slope of demand function. Is it
Who is
always a
speaking?
Rishi Raj?
Yes. You have a doubt regarding?
Nature of slope of demand function.
Okay. Yes.
Is it always a downward slope?
So you've asked a very interesting question, because in some very exceptional circumstances, like in a platform economy or something, I'm talking about platform economy because there's one more course by Professor Vimal which I do TA for. In some exceptional circumstances, it can be upward sloping, but that is it's not like a direct. A platform is having multi-agents, multiple types of agents, so it's a very different thing. But for normal purposes, for all kinds of goods of all types, the slope will always be downward sloping. And he's explained, I think, because of the marginal diminishing returns from every additional quantity consumed.
Okay.
Okay, is that it?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go to the next question, which is just talking about a slightly different concept now. So your maximum willingness to pay for a cup of tea is 30 rupees. At the Bangalore airport, the market demand for tea is given by this function. Now, this is a made-up function. Okay, this is a question I have made. It's not from a book. Okay, suppose it is given by this. Q is given by 60 plus 0.5 y minus 3 p, where Q is the market demand for cups of tea in thousands per month. Y is the average income of buyers, and P is price of cup of tea. Okay. Now, in the month of February, they find that Y is 80 and Q is 40. So now they're asking you what is the consumer surplus for the month of February. So how do we solve this? So not a very difficult question, but just testing a different concept. How will we do this? Anybody wants to explain? If you got the answer, that's great. But I also want to hear how you solve it. I think somebody posted an answer. Okay. Yeah, somebody has answered it correctly. Anyone else? You can also unmute and just speak. No one? Okay, so what we know is the function, and we know the value of y, and we know the value of q. So we can compute the value of p, right? So far, so good. The main question is what is what is the definition of consumer surplus? Okay, so let me write this. Okay. Now, let me just write the function again in front of us. We are given q is equal to 60 plus 0.5y minus 3p. And we are saying it's pretty straightforward. Y is found to be 80, q is found to be 40. So first of all, we can see, we can calculate the price, right? Q is 40, 60 plus 0.5y is 40 minus 3p. 100 this side minus 60 is equal to minus 3p. P is equal to 20. So price of a cup of tea is 20. Right now it is hopefully a little simpler. Consumer surplus is defined as maximum willing. I'm instead of writing the whole thing, I'm just going to write it in short form. Maximum willingness to pay minus the actual price of the good. What is the maximum willingness to pay? What is, suppose you like something, you want to buy something, and you have a range in your head. Okay, I even say if you're buying like a sweater or a pen or a notebook, you generally have some idea in your head, right? This is the maximum I want to pay for it. I want to buy a sweater, but it should be within 1,000 rupees, something like that, right? So when you're doing these mental calculations of before you buy something, that is what it is, the maximum willingness to pay. It's not something too abstract or some weird concept. It's something we all do in everyday life when we are buying products, right? So similarly, when you are going to the airport, you have some idea of how much you can pay for something, right? So in this case, it's given that the maximum willingness to pay is 30 rupees. So if the price is less than that, in a way, it is like something you have saved, right? Because you're willing to dish out 30 rupees, but you have to pay only 20 rupees. The price is 20. So the maximum willingness to pay minus the price is what gives you the consumer surplus. Consumer surplus is some kind of a benefit which the consumer is getting. If what price the good is at is the same as your maximum willingness to pay, then you have no surplus. It's zero, right? So in this case, the maximum willingness to pay is given to you as 30, and price we have just computed to be 20. Okay, I hope I'm still audible. So your surplus is going to come out to be 10, right? Okay. Let's go to the next question. It's a similar kind of a question, same kind of concept. You like, say, suppose there's a girl, Anna, she likes eating pizzas, but say, suppose it's a giant pizza, like a 12-inch pizza or something, okay? And so her valuation of every slice of pizza is different. So she does not value each slice the same way. That is how we normally are, right? If you've already eaten one slice of pizza, your fulfillment or your happiness from the next slice of pizza is going to be slightly lesser, right? That is what we mean, that her value of each slice of pizza is different. The table shows her valuation of the ith pizza slice. When we say ith, we mean the first slice she has already consumed, suppose, then the second one is what she is next consuming, third is what she's consuming after that, so on and so forth. So the table is showing you what her personal valuation is for each slice of pizza, each ith slice of pizza. But the market price of one slice of pizza is the same, right? I mean, all the slices are priced at the same price. There's no differential pricing over here. When they say the market price of one pizza slice is 80 rupees, it means each pizza slice is priced at the same number. So how many pizza slices does she consume? That's the question. Now, we know that you will consume something or you will buy something only as long as your valuation of that thing is equal to or more than the price of the thing. If my valuation is 50, but the price of something is say 100, I'm not going to buy it, right? So that's what we are asking over here. So I'll give you a minute. I will be happy if more people participate or answer. You can also unmute and speak or ask a question if this is not clear. This is a very important concept. You may not realize, but this is a concept we use every day in every financial transaction we are willing to make. So at least at this level, the microeconomics we study is the microeconomics of literally everyday life. These are decisions we are making every single day, from buying the cheapest cup of tea you buy or coffee or whatever to buying the most expensive item you buy. Okay.
Madam,
Yes.
in the question, when you say value, is
Yes.
this in what terms is the value defined? Is it monetary terms or is
Yes.
it
So value will always be in the same terms as the price. It's in rupees.
okay?
Yeah. So INR. So when we are saying value, it is in monetary terms because that is what valuation is. Valuation has to be in the same unit as the pricing, right? Because we are comparing valuation versus pricing. So how can you compare it if it's in different terms? I mean, I know that if it's clearer, I can also mention it in brackets. It's in INR, but this is the general thing I'm just answering. That whenever you have something like a valuation of something in anything, it could be even in macroeconomics or something very complex, but the valuation by default is generally going to be in the same unit as the price of that particular object or that good or service or whatever. Okay. Anything else anyone wants to ask or answer? Okay, I think 4 or 5 people have answered. Mostly you're all correct. So basically you see for the 5th slice of pizza, her valuation is 75, but the price is 80. So if your valuation of something is lesser than its price, why will you buy it, right? So she will stop at the 4th slice because up till the 4th slice, her valuation is higher than the price. So she's getting some consumer surplus, right? There's a positive consumer surplus. You buy a good only as long as the consumer surplus is greater than or equal to 0. Equal to 0 is like the borderline, what we call as the reservation price. Just refreshing what I covered earlier in the class. But if your valuation is less than the price, you will not buy it, right? Okay. So I'm assuming this is clear to everybody. It's more of compensating her utility with market value. Opportunity, cost, and trade-offs explains better. So opportunity cost is going to come into play when there is some alternative. I've not talked about any alternative in question A. So I'm not sure what exactly you're referring to. If you want, you can unmute yourself and speak. Okay, I will come to the next question. Abhinash is asking, can we increase someone's willingness to pay? I'll come to that. So before that, Sudeep, have I answered your question? You've mentioned something about opportunity cost, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So in this
Yes,
case,
sir.
If you want to explain what you're saying, you can go ahead.
It's because the utility here, what the other person was asking was that the price, the medium, we are comparing our utility. Utility cannot be measured in any other terms. It's the money in the market
No,
price.
we are not measuring utility here. That's why I wanted you to speak, because I'm afraid you're mixing up a few things. In this case, I have not talked about utility at all so far in this class.
Right.
And there's a reason for that, because utility is defined in a very different way. Utility is
Uh,
not an actual numerical number equivalent of price. You getting it? Utility is, I will explain it in the class in which we discuss utility, but value is not the same thing as utility. That's what I wanted to say.
yeah, I got it.
Okay. Yeah, so that's why I'm not talking about utility here, because I have not defined the utility function at all. And utility function has to be defined. It's not a simple mathematical, it's an equivalence or something. It can be defined as a mathematical equivalence, but that's something I will come to later. And similarly for opportunity cost and trade-offs, we come to those things only when there is another alternative. I'm only talking about pizza here. So if it was a comparison between pizza and burger, then it would be a very different question altogether.
Right. One thing I just want to comment on that, because we are actually sacrificing all the money for the particular quantity. If we can compare on that ground, because uh, we are sacrificing the money for purchasing that pizzas. No? So that
Yes.
is also you can compare that opportunity cost trade-offs of the money, because I
Yeah, I
am
mean, philosophically you could, but that is
yeah,
not the term you normally use to explain this.
right. Utility may
Because
be
you
a
can
wrong
think,
word.
yes, because I think it's a bit confusing, because we have not covered utility so far. That's why we have not defined what utility means. So maybe you're mixing it up that way. That's why I wanted to stop you right there. We will cover utility later on. But when we're talking about value, what I think what you're trying to say is that money could be put to some other use. That's what you mean to say, right? That you're
Right.
spending $80 on one slice of pizza. So, if we want, you could spend that $80 on something else. That's what you're trying to say.
Right.
Right.
Means it is
Yes.
our propensity to consume just decreasing. You can say.
Yes.
So that is the word. We are actually the lesser amount of money if we are importing as per the market price, then we can just consume it. The price, if the MPC just decreases below the market price, we stop consuming.
Yes, so that's what I think your understanding is correct. The terms you are using actually all have very specific meanings in the world of economics. That's why I wanted you to explain what you're saying. Um, so we are talking about personal valuation here, okay, which is very different from opportunity cost or utility, or even propensity to consume is similar to value, but not the same thing. Value is a very tangible term. That's why we're using the word value here. Value means how much I am willing to pay, maximum I'm willing to pay for a certain object. So it's a very clearly a number. It's not some idea I have in my head, a philosophical thing or something like that. It's not a vague thing. We are very clearly defining the what we mean by value. For example, if you want to buy a bag of chips, oops, sorry. Yeah, if you want to buy a bag of chips, what is the maximum amount of money you're willing to pay? So if it's 50 rupees, that is your value, right? That is your maximum willingness to pay. So value is defined as maximum willingness to pay. So it has to be in terms of price. It is not some random number. What is the maximum price which you are willing to pay for it? So that is why I'm emphasizing on this term, because it's very easy to mix up a few terms and you may completely misinterpret it in without realizing that you're doing that. Whereas opportunity cost is usually um, when used, the term opportunity cost is used when you're weighing your alternatives between A and B and C. If in this case you could say that you would rather have that money than spend it on pizza, in technically that is correct, but that is not where we normally use the word opportunity cost. Okay, so I think it's mostly clear. Somebody asked another question. Can we increase someone's willingness to pay? So that is the job of marketing and sales usually. We don't cover it in economics because we, mostly take it as given. There, in rare circumstances, if you're doing some very advanced microeconomics, you may model your value or willingness to pay as something else, function of something. But normally, in normal your level microeconomics, we will take willingness to pay as given. In, say, industrial economics or something like that, there may be some function defining willingness to pay. But in real life, if you just speak in everyday life kind of a scenario, that is where sales and marketing comes in. Marketing makes you want to have something. So initially, say suppose there's a new product which has been launched. Initially, your willingness to pay would be zero, right? You have no need for it. But marketing and sales does that job. They make you realize, oh, you actually need this. It's so good. It can help you do this. It can help you make your life so much easier. So initially you didn't want to buy it at all, but now you're somehow feeling, you're convinced that you can buy it or you should buy it. And your willingness to pay has increased from 0 to say 1,000 rupees or 2,000 rupees or whatever, right? So that is usually in the field of marketing and sales. We don't include it in the level of microeconomics which we are studying. You will not encounter cases where somebody's willingness to pay is increasing or decreasing. In some cases, it may be part of the question, but I think I'm just answering your question, not for this question, but in general in economics. So I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So this is the last question, and it's an important question. So you are given the demand function for movies, which is Q1 is equal to 120 minus P for college students, and Q2 is 60 minus 0.5 P for other town residents. So there's a town which has, say, a college or an institute or university, something, and they have given different functions for college students and for other town residents. Now, what they want to know is the total demand function for that particular town, and it says to carefully draw a figure to illustrate your answer. So this is a very interesting question and covers the concept, I think, which is there in the lectures. So I think we are almost near the end of the class. So I'm going to solve this. Anybody wants? I'll give you 2 minutes to think over it before I start solving it. It's not a straightforward answer. That's all I will tell you. Okay, so I think somebody has answered it. Great. Anyone else wants to answer? Okay, so let me go ahead and solve it then. Let me open the question 1 minute. Okay, so you are given Q1 is equal to 120 minus P. Q2 is equal to 60 minus 0.5 P. Okay, so now on the same graph, I will plot both the demand functions. Is this straight? Not really. Okay. Okay, so let's do the first one. When P is 0, Q is 120. And when Q is 0, P is 120. Okay, so it's not exact, right? But it's almost Okay, let's go with this. Okay, let's do the next one. So when P is 0, Q2 is 60. And when Q is 0, when P is 0, Q is 60. And when Q is 0, P is 120. 1 minute. Short. Okay, so this is okay. So these are the two demand curves. Now, what we're trying to see here is the price at which Q becomes 0. Okay, that is the main thing you have to check here. So otherwise, normally demand is taken as horizontal summation of the demands of individual demands, right? So if you want to use that, that is technically correct, but you have to also assess it based on the functions given to you. So what we want to see here is at what price the quantity demanded is becoming 0 for either college students or other town residents, so Q1 and Q2. So now for Q1 is 0 for P is equal to 120, right? And Q2 is 0 for also Q is 0 for P is equal to 120. 1 minute. There's something wrong here. Yeah, I think I copied it wrong. Sorry. One minute. No, I'm correct here. Okay, so in this case, actually, this is pretty straightforward. Yeah, I wrote down another example I wanted to solve. That's why I was getting confused. Okay, so in this case, what is happening is that at the same price, both Q1 and Q2 are becoming 0. Okay, so in this case, like I was saying, at P is equal to 120, Q1 is equal to 0 and Q2 is equal to 0. So there is no sort of change from one to the other. Therefore, you can say Q is equal to Q1 plus Q2, and you can say Q is equal to 118 minus 1.5 P. But now, in this case, it turns out to be like this. But say, suppose there is something else happening. Suppose there is a minor variation in this question. So in a similar kind of a situation, but the demand functions are something else. If Q1 is equal to 100 minus P, Q2 is equal to 50 minus P. So what do you think is going to happen in this scenario? So in this scenario, what we need to do is we need to solve each one separately. That's why I drew the diagram, because in this diagram, you can clearly see that for both Q1 and Q2, the value is 0 for the same price, right? Here you can see in this diagram, it's 0 at 120. So far, so good. No answer. I'll come to the second example. I have given the second example as a different scenario. So I'm not talking about the second example right now. Just in the given question, I'm just saying that for the same price, both the quantities are 0. That's why we are able to take Q as direct sum of Q1 and Q2. And that's how you got the answer. Is that much clear to everybody? Okay. Now let's come to another example. Let's say this is question 10, which is not in the slides. I just wrote it down before to cover in the class. Now say suppose these are two other functions, right? These are not what we were given. Say suppose it is these two functions instead of what we were given. Let's draw this here. Again, I'm going to draw it in different colors. So, oh, I deleted this. Sorry. Okay, so let's draw these two diagrams and see what happens. So Q is equal to 0 at P is equal to 100 and P is equal to 0 at Q is equal to 100. So they're both similar kind of functions, but values are different. So this is the first one, Q1. And let's draw the other one. Some other color, man. Okay, let's go with this only. Okay, Q2 is 50 and 50. So this is Q2. So now in this scenario, what we see is this is 100, this is 50, this is 50, and this is 100, right? So in this scenario, what we see is that for price greater than 50, demand for the second group is 0, right? Because they can't afford more than 50. Their reservation price is 50. Whereas for the first group, Q1, demand is 0 above 100. So what happens? That means that in this region, okay, it's not working. Anyway, so in this region, let me color this region. Maybe that will be easier. So in this region, you have a demand from both Q1 and Q2, right? Whereas in the other region, above price 50, sorry, not 5, above, above price 50, you have demand only from Q1. Okay, it's a bit ugly. I've just drawn it for clarity purpose. It's okay, this switch background function is not working. I don't know why. Anyway, I think you can understand from the diagram. It's anyways going to be there in the notes which I upload. So basically for okay, now it has switched. Okay, I'm just going to go with whatever is there. Now let's say for P less than 50, Q is equal to Q1 plus Q2. Because for price less than 50, the demand is positive for both the groups, Q1 and Q2, right? So we'll say Q is equal to 150 minus 2P. For P between 100 and 50, we can say that Q is equal to Q1 because Q2 is 0 above 50, right? And for P greater than 100, we can say Q is equal to 0. So I wanted to take both these examples so you understand how we solve for the demand function where, you know, partial demand functions are given to you. So for each demand function, like in this scenario, we had two demand functions, two partial demand functions, and we had to compute the total demand, right? Now, for each of the partial demand functions, you will see at what price the demand is becoming 0. So for each partial demand function, you will see at what price the demand for that particular function is 0. And then you will break it into these kind of segments. And you can, of course, if you draw the diagram, it's a whole lot easier for you to understand. And if you want, you can draw this diagram and, you know, you can make this diagram of the partial demand functions solved like this, and then total demand function. Let me draw that also. So say this is 50, this is 100. So for price less than 50, it's following this function, 150 minus 2p. Okay. At p is equal to 0, q is 150. So let's say 150. And at q is equal to 0, p is, did I do something wrong? No. Okay, 1 minute. Yeah, so let's, okay, this diagram, I'm a little bit, I think I've drawn something wrong. This part is correct. For q is equal to 0, p is 1. Okay, so this is like sort of like the average thing. Yeah, okay, right. This is like this. And let's draw a dotted line here. Okay, let me draw this. And okay, so this is how you will draw this part of the function. And then q is equal to q1 for p between 50 and 100. Okay, what is the function given by q1? It is 100 minus p. Let me draw it in a different color. P is equal to this, ideally, okay, this, it's not to scale. Let me do this. It's looking like it's one straight line, but it's not exactly one straight line. And then this. So it will have 3 segments. It's not switching the diagram. I don't know why it's not switching. Okay, hopefully you understood what I've drawn. I'll just repeat it. I was mumbling a little bit earlier. Let me explain it again. So in this, what I've done is I've broken it down into 3 parts. Let me label the 3 parts. This is first part, this is second part, and this is third part. So when you have to draw the total demand function for this particular example, you will draw 3 different parts, okay, which are defined for p equal to 50 or less, p equal to 100, 50 between 15 and 100, and p greater than 100. All right. So first we will draw the function for p less than 50, which is q1 plus q2. The function is given by q is equal to 150 minus 2p. We draw that straight line, but we draw it only till p equal to 50 here. Okay. Then we draw the next segment, which is for p between 50 and 100. And that is this blue curve I've drawn, which is for this particular, okay, 1 minute. This may not be 100. This is just the intersection point. We'll see at what point it is intersecting. But this is the second segment, and above 100, Q is 0, which is that pink part which I've drawn. Okay, is this making sense? My diagram is not very good, unfortunately. It's not so easy to draw on iPad, but hopefully, conceptually, you have understood. Okay, this is unclear. I will explain again in the next class. Basically, you just calculate when Q is 0 for each partial demand function and see at what price. Then you break down the total demand function into 3 parts or 4 parts or whatever number of parts it comes out to be. And if you have to draw the total demand function, similarly, you draw the 3 different segments for it. And you will see what the points of intersection are. Is that clear?
Madam,
Making sense? Yes.
for the blue curve, you could extend it, right?
Yes, you could extend it, but I have not extended it because it's not defined in as Q is equal to Q1 in that particular range. You get what I mean?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so here I have just clipped it here. And my diagram is not very much to scale. That's the other reason why I'm not drawing it. It'll look confusing otherwise. So this curve may be something like this, but it is defined only from this point to this point. Only this segment of the curve is actually valid for the total demand function.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So similarly, if you want, you can extend the black curve also a little bit just for understanding. It is defined only between this range though. Okay, and above 100, this part also has to be mentioned. I don't know if it's clear, but this pink part, this Q is equal to 0 here. This will also be a part of the demand function. Don't forget this part. This is a part which always, even I sometimes used to forget, but I'm just commenting. So let me just label this also before we go. Q is equal to Q1, and in this part, Q is equal to Q1 plus Q2. Okay, all right. So if this is good, I will end the class here. And as I said, you have some reference reading at the bottom in this slides. The first two are hyperlinks, so you can access those online. Can I explain about marginal what? Marginal utility? Is that what you're asking? Marginal value. Okay, so actually we are beyond the class time today. So let me do one thing. Why don't you send me your question? My email is, I think, there everywhere, but if you want, I will just type it here also. Or you can just post in the group chat, and I will answer your question first thing in the next class. Sure? Okay. I will answer it. It'll take some time for me to explain. It'll take me at least 10 to 15 minutes. And I don't want to extend the class too much. So I will answer your question at the first thing in the next class. Please, either you can email it to me directly, or there is a discussion forum. I don't know if you guys have seen it. There is a discussion forum where you can post your questions. So you can just mention that you want it discussed in the live session, and I will answer it in the live session. Okay. All right. So I will end the class here. And generally, I mean, I know some questions come up only when we discuss questions, but it's a little easier for me to manage the time distribution if you let me know your questions in the beginning of the class, so that, you know, I can balance time spent on different things based on how much you guys want to ask. So if you already have a burning question, please ask me at the beginning of the class or in the discussion forum, and I will answer that first thing, or I will just make sure that I cover it in that class. Okay, so all right, so thank you everyone for joining. We'll have the class from 4 to 6 every Saturday, and there's not going to be any changes in that. Everything else remains the same. Please bookmark the link for the Google Drive thing, and see you again next week. Thank you.